We recently released this song for the book of Jude.
Gave love and when I gave all diligence to ride unto you the common salvation. It was needful for me to ride unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith.
Go check out the lyric video here if you want to hear more. And if you like biblical metal, you might want to subscribe because we're on a mission to help metalheads know and live the Bible. Now, this is part 2 of our verse-by-verse analysis of Jude. So if you missed part 1, go check it out. We left off after reading verse 4, asking the question, what was revealed about these false teachers and ungodly people? So let's look into that. In this next section, Jude explains how these ungodly people were marked out beforehand by alluding to several Old Testament passages and stories from Jewish oral traditions. I'm no Jewish historian, but I'll do my best to explain each reference. Now, the first one is in verse 5, and most of you will probably be familiar with this story, but we're going to look into why Jude is alluding to it. All right, so verse 5. Now, I want to remind you, though you know all things, that Jesus, having once saved a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. We can see this in Exodus 32. So Moses goes up to meet with God and receive the 10 Commandments and whatnot, and he's gone for a long time. And so the Israelites, who had just been set free from Egypt, saw all of the plagues, saw all of the miracles, walked through the Red Sea as on dry ground. They got tired of waiting, and basically they were like, we don't know what happened to Moses or the Lord, so we're going to make a new God out of gold and worship it. So let's focus on the end of chapter 32 here from verse 31. Then Moses returned to Yahweh and said, Alas, this people has committed a great sin, and they have made gods of gold for themselves. But now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out from your book which you have written. And Yahweh said to Moses, Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out of my book. But now go, guide the people where I told you. Behold, my angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I will punish them for their sin. Then Yahweh smote the people because of what they did with the calf which Aaron had made. Okay, so these people were saved out of Egypt. And prophetically, Egypt represents slavery to sin. So these people were saved out of Egypt, just like followers of Christ are saved from slavery to sin. So they were saved out of Egypt, but they weren't allowed to enter the promised land. They were destroyed because they did not continue in their faith. Now, there's another Old Testament story in Numbers chapter 14 that's very similar. So basically, the Israelites had sent spies into the promised land to see what it was like, what kind of people lived there, because God told them to go there and conquer it. So when the spies came back, many of them were very discouraged because they saw the giants and they were saying they were huge and strong and afraid that they would just basically like get crushed, I guess. Like just get decimated by these giants. And when they told the Israelites this, many of them responded like this in verse 2. And all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, I guess it was everybody, according to this, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness? What that means is they would prefer that than to face these giants and lose to them. And why is Yahweh bringing us into this land? To fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they planned to return to Egypt, which again, remember, prophetically, Egypt represents slavery to sin. So they planned on returning to their sin. So they stopped believing in God after they had been set free from slavery. They didn't believe that God would give them victory and give them the promised land. So they thought the best thing that they could do was go back to Egypt or go back to sin. And then so farther down in the chapter, Moses again has a conversation with God about the Israelites and asking God to pardon them and to have mercy on them. And so he says here in verse 20, so Yahweh said, I have pardoned them according to your word, but indeed, as I live, all the earth will be filled with the glory of Yahweh. Surely all the men who have seen my glory and my signs, which I have done in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have put me to the test these 10 times, and have not listened to my voice, shall by no means see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who spurned me see it. But my servant Caleb, who was one of the spies who went, but he wasn't afraid, and he was encouraging Israel that God would give them victory. But my servant Caleb, because he has had a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land which he entered, and his seed shall take possession of it. So remember up here where it says in verse 3, and why is Yahweh bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Down here in verse 28, Yahweh says to them, as I live, declares Yahweh, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will surely do to you. Your corpses will fall in this wilderness, even all your numbered men, according to your complete number, from 20 years old and upward, who have grumbled against me. Surely you shall not come into the land in which I swore to make you dwell, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. Your little ones, however, who you said would become plunder, I will bring them in, so that they will know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your corpses will fall in this wilderness. Okay, so back to Jude here. Remember, I want to remind you, though you know all things, that Jesus, having once saved a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. So he saved them out of slavery from sin, but then he destroyed them who did not believe. I would argue to say that they did believe at one point, or else they wouldn't have followed Moses in the first place. But they did not continue in their faith. All right, I'm about to drop a very controversial doctrinal bomb right here. Based off of what Jude is saying, this is a very clear warning that just because Jesus saves someone from slavery to sin does not mean that they won't be destroyed if they don't continue in faith, and that they won't be destroyed if they return to sin. It doesn't mean that he won't judge them if they turn away from him and go back to their sin. Like I said, I know that's a controversial topic, but there's no other reason for Jude to write this warning. He can't be telling them that people who have never been saved will be destroyed. That doesn't apply to what he said, and that wasn't the issue at hand. They probably already knew that fact, but the issue was people thinking and teaching that they can go back into sin on account of the grace of God, even after believing in Jesus and being saved from sin. So he's warning them that the same way that God saved Israel from Egypt, but destroyed those who did not endure in their faith, God will destroy those who get saved from slavery to sin, but then later turn away from Christ and return to sin. There are other scriptures that we can look at to support this point, like Hebrews chapter 10, verses 26 to 27. And I can make another video about that if y'all want. But for the sake of this video, let's focus on Jude and what was revealed about these ungodly people. All right, the rest of these shouldn't take as long because we're not going to look at them in depth. But here we go. Let's continue. So, verse 6. And angels who did not keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper abode, he has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Apparently, there are angels bound in darkness awaiting judgment. I don't think anyone knows for sure if this is every fallen angel ever, or certain ones like the ones that fell with Satan in the beginning, or most likely, as some oral traditions suggest, like in the book of Enoch, they're the angels who fathered the giants. And 2 Peter chapter 2 has a very similar passage to this part of Jude, and verse 4 talks about these angels as well. For if God did not spare angels who sinned, but cast them into the pit and delivered them to chains of darkness, being kept for judgment. But what do y'all think? Who are these fallen angels? Either way, the point is they didn't stay in their lane, and when they were supposed to be doing God's will, they decided to follow their own selfish, evil, lustful desires, and ended up bound in pits of darkness, awaiting final judgment. So, next, verse 7. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, having indulged in the same way as these in gross sexual immorality, let's look at that real quick. Having indulged in the same way as these angels, that seems to suggest that verse 6 is talking about the angels who fathered the giants. That's why I say that's most likely the case. Verse 7 again from the top. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, having indulged in the same way as these in gross sexual immorality, and having gone after strange flesh, are exhibited as an example in undergoing the punishment of eternal fire. So these people in verse 7 are an example of the punishment that all sinners deserve. So when people give an excuse for sin and say, God understands me, He's not going to judge me for my sin. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just trying to have fun. You can lovingly and humbly show them this passage to help them see that God has already given them an example of what happens to people who are sinfully just trying to have fun, and encourage them to repent and offer to pray with them for God to give them a new heart that loves purity rather than sin. Continuing in verse 8, yet in the same way these men also by dreaming defile the flesh and reject authority and blaspheme glorious ones. Now we're back to the main point. Again, all of those references to the unfaithful Israelites, fallen angels, Sodom and Gomorrah were to paint a clear picture to the readers what kinds of people these false teachers are and why we shouldn't follow them. But that phrase, blaspheme glorious ones, can be kind of difficult to understand. What does that mean? Who are these glorious ones and how are they blaspheming them? And it becomes really interesting in context with verse 9, and some people actually come to the wrong understanding of the doctrines involved and the application of these verses. So I want to go over that in the next video. If you learned anything or were convicted of anything from this video, comment what it was so I can know how God used this video to bless you and so we can thank God together. And share this with a friend so y'all can discuss it together and sharpen each other. Don't forget to go check out our lyric video for Jude if you haven't yet. Check the link in the description for ways to support us. Otherwise, talk to you soon. Peace.